I'm Josh Fothergill, Water Resource East's Acting Project Manager for the Integrated Environmental Assessment. I'm going to tell you about what Integrated Environmental Assessment is, why we're doing it, how does it influence our decision-making processes, and how you can use the findings if you're involved in the planning conferences taking place in October. So what is integrated environmental assessment? Well, it's actually a combination of multiple assessments. Regional plan making includes an expectation for us to undertake various forms of environmental assessment as we undertake the plan making process in order to maximise the environmental performance and minimise adverse consequences that could result from it. The 6 assessments are listed there. To take you through them very briefly, strategic environmental assessment is a broad-ranging assessment of various different environmental topics: air quality, water, population, human health, soil impacts, impacts on material assets, cultural heritage, etc. So that's quite a broad-ranged environmental assessment. Habitat regulation assessment, water framework directive assessment, and invasive non-native species assessment are far more specific. The habitats regulations looking at designated Natura 2000 sites. These are areas, special areas of conservation or special protection areas that are designated at the UK and previously European level. The Water Framework Directive is looking specifically at are there any consequences from the proposed planned actions that could put at risk the objectives to improve water bodies within our river basins and catchments. And the invasive non-native species, as you might expect, is considering whether options or activities within the plan could increase the spread of such species or help to mitigate it. There's then 2 further forms of assessment that are increasingly expected from the government, particularly from DEFRA, Natural England and the Environment Agency. And this is taking a natural capital approach, looking at ecosystem services. This is a way of looking at the value humans get from the services that the environment provides and how these might change as a result of options within the plan making. So this is things like food production, access to recreation, natural hazard management such as flood protection, carbon sequestration, how carbon is embodied in plants and perhaps stored and therefore not going out up into the atmosphere. And finally, biodiversity net gain assessment. And this considers the ecological value of different land uses and how actions in the plan might change this either for the better or the worse. It's notable that each of our options that we take forward in terms of new supplies, if they require planning consent or a wider consent order, are very likely to have to deliver a 10% net gain benefit. But we need to understand if there is a change before that in terms of the existing biodiversity unit, so that there's no net loss on site before we start delivering that net gain. So why are we doing it? Well, we want to ensure that the regional plan performs well for the environment overall, not just for our focus that the plan has on water resources within the region. We need to ensure that our processes meet various regulator expectations, and you can see the national framework there for water resources, which is the overarching guide for Water Resource East's approach to water resource planning. That's from the Environment Agency. And also we're going to be seeking to maximise the opportunities for biodiversity and environmental net gain in the region by considering the findings of these assessments alongside the outcomes of our systematic conservation planning work that you may have heard of. And if you haven't, please have a look on the website at the systematic conservation planning section. You can see the link just down there at the bottom of each slide. So how is it influencing decision making? Well, already we've had a consultation phase that's allowed yourselves and statutory environmental bodies to feed into how these assessments take shape. And then we've done a screening process from February to July this year, where we've taken out options that have too much environmental risk. We fed our findings of some of the risks of that screening process, the more minor risks, into the design and development of options to reduce their impact. And we've undertaken a detailed assessment of each of the feasible options that are being considered in terms of new supply to replace changes as a result of the environmental destination, the ambition to enhance the amount of water in the environment that you'll be able to hear of in one of the other videos. Now, in these planning conferences, the ones we undertook in August with WRE's board and the forthcoming ones in October, there will be summary sheets about the integrated environmental assessment findings for each of the supply options, and also available on environmental ambition scenarios and a selection of the demand management. I'll talk about those more on the next slide. There's also some track metrics from the integrated environmental assessment, and these are integrated into the search tool that's called Polyviz, and you can watch a webinar on that as well. These provide a way of comparing the environmental performance between the portfolios. And then finally, we also have a tool that I can use in relation to this that allows us to look at which of the specific options within the process might be driving the significant effects, so which of the supply options is perhaps driving those metrics. And as we move forward, what we'll be looking to do is further assessment of the draft plan and its alternatives, and some specific assessments related to habitat regulation assessment and the Water Framework Directive assessments for the options that are looking most likely to be carried forward into our plan. There'll be a reporting and consultation phase informally in January 22, and then the full formal consultation is expected to take place in August next year, where there will be complete reports of each of those assessments that I discussed at the start of this. So how are we using the integrated environmental assessment within our planning conferences? Well, the summary sheets that I mentioned earlier, these are linked from the Polyviz tool. So when you've gone through a search, you can get to each of these for an option, but these are also going to be available from WRB's SharePoint site, both as PDFs looking like the document that is in front of you and will appear shortly, but also more detail in terms of Microsoft Excel files if you want to delve into the details of the assessments. So what you will see in each summary sheet is a summary of what is the option, what's its code that we use for it, whether it's had positive or negative environmental effects for the SEA, Strategic Environmental Assessment, that broad assessment, and a summary of those findings here, and then a summary of each of the different findings for habitat regs, natural capital assessments, ecosystem services, etc. And then finally a map that shows you where the option is and its kind of routing and information. So that gives you some findings that you can look at for each option, and you can make yourself familiar with those if you wish to do so. In terms of the track metrics, these are going to be within the Polyviz tool, the search tool that you will see within the planning conferences, and please do watch the webinar about that. Our main metrics are coming out of the Strategic Environmental Assessment, that broad assessment, and they'll be looking at the positive overall effect of each of the portfolios, the combination of options that we need to meet the supply and demand balance. So we'll be looking at positive construction effects to the environment, negative construction effects to the environment, positive operational effects of those new water supply options moving forward, and the negative operational effects. And we've kept those separate so that you can see the variation rather than trying to spread them all together into one metric. There's two additional metrics that are derived from the ecosystem services. There's benefits we get from nature that have come out of our natural capital approach, and also findings out of the biodiversity net gain assessment. And again, they're the kind of things that you can look at in Polyviz and see how a portfolio or a range of portfolios to meet the supply and demand balance has an effect on those. So finally, to use that information in your inputs to this process, well, prior to attending a planning conference, if you're a delegate at one of these, you might want to get familiar with the IEA, the Integrated Environmental Assessment Summary Sheets I showed 2 slides back, just the format of them, the type of information. You might want to look at findings from a few different option types, desalination plants, reservoirs, transfer schemes, to get an idea of the type of issues that come up. And if you're interested in a particular scheme, then you can delve into the Microsoft Excel file and look at the further details of that. The Regional Planning Pack provides you with further advice on this. And in terms of portfolio selection, you can potentially look at the track metrics of the Integrated Environmental Assessment that I discussed on the last slide and see how they change between different portfolios. Or you can look into those summary sheets via Polyviz or WRE's SharePoint site and see which of the options is particularly driving positive or negative environmental effects. So finally, if you'd like to know more about the Integrated Environmental Assessment process, well, the Planning Conference Briefing Pack, if you're coming to the Planning Conference, is a very good start. There's a summary of the IEA process within Section 19 and advice on how to use the findings within Section 21. There's also our website. You can find the link there, /projects/integrated-environmental-assessment. That gives you a glossary of the terms we're using in the integrated environmental assessment, and also access to those previous documents we consulted on at the start of the year. And finally, please feel free to ask us questions about the integrated environmental assessment when you're attending the planning conferences, or via the contact email address that is available on WRE's website. So thank you very much for listening. That's all from me. I hope you found this useful. Goodbye.